Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Thiruvan Saranai. Good evening, Venerable Mahasangha, Sales, and brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Today we are going to talk further on the Āsavagocchakaṃ, and we are going to now delve deeper into the commentaries and the sub-commentaries to this particular Gocchaka. So as you would all remember, the Āsavas are the four Dhammas named here. Kāmāsava, Bhavāsava, which is Lobha, Cetasika, Ditthāsava, which is Ditti Cetasika, and Avijjāsava, which is Moha Cetasika. Now, the first description given in the Atthasālinī is about kāmesu. What is kāmesu, or what is meant by sensual pleasures? The desires of the 5 strands of sensual pleasures is how the Atthasālinī defines kāmesu, or sensual pleasures. That means if you take the 5 strands of sensual pleasures, these are the Rūpa, Saddha, Gandha, Rasa, Pottabha. The visible form, sound, smell, taste, and tangible objects. These are the objects that act as ārammana, or sense objects to the defilements, including lobha. So, kāmesu is, in other words, a part of lobha cetasika, and these 5 objects are the sense objects to that cetasika. Now we will go back to this Nikkepa description of Kāmāsava. So first we are going to look at Kāma Chando, or sensual desire, and how it is described in the commentary and the sub-commentaries. So the word Kāma Chanda is formed by combining 2 words, Kāma and Chanda. Kāma referring to sensual pleasures, Chanda referring to desire. Now, Kāma Chanda, or sensual desire, means the desire that is designated as sensual desire, the desire towards Kāma, or the objects of Kāma. It is not the desire to do Kattu Kamyata Chando, nor righteous desire, Dhamma Chando. So there are other forms of Chanda, other desires. Now, Kattu Kamyata Chanda means the desire to do something. So that may be either wholesome or unwholesome. Dhamma Chanda is righteous desire. That means the desire to do wholesome deeds. For example, now we are discussing the Dhamma and the listeners are listening to the Dhamma. That is a wholesome action. Then if we donate something, if we give a dana, that is a wholesome action. That is, we do that because we have a desire to do wholesome deeds. So that's a righteous desire. That's a Dhamma Chanda. So we must understand that this Kāma Chanda is not the same as Kattu Kamyata Chanda, nor is it the same as Dhamma Chanda. It's completely different to these 2. Now we'll go to the Mula Tika description. So this is a further sub-commentary to the Atthasālinī, that is the Dhammasaṅgaṇī commentary. And in the explanation of Kāmāsava, intoxicant of sensual desire, the expression in sensual pleasures, or kāmesu, can be understood as referring to the objective sensual objects, the vattu kāma. So those are the 5 things that we described before, the Rūpa, Saddha, Gandha, Rasa, Pottabha, of the 3 realms. So you have to understand now, of course, in the Arupa Avachara, you don't get the Rūpa, but you get the remaining thing. But basically the vattu kāma, these are the objects, and these are the things that serve as an object of thought to the defilements, including Kāma-raga, that is sensual passion, and Ditti-raga, attachment to views. So the vattu kama is the object that serves as the object of thought to these defilements. Now we go to the Mulatika description of Kamachanda. Now we mentioned earlier in the Atthasālinī it was given that we have to differentiate between Kamachanda, Kattukamyata Chanda and Dhammachanda, right? So there are different types of chanda, different types of craving or tanha that arises, but not all of it receives the designation of Kamachanda or similar names. That is because of the example given here is these two, Kattukamyata Chanda, that can arise in unwholesome states, but when it comes to Dhammachanda, it will never arise in an unwholesome state. Now, Kattukamyata Chanda is basically the desire to do something. It may be either wholesome or unwholesome. But when it comes to Dhammachanda, it is always wholesome. That will never arise in an unwholesome state.
Sorry, doctor, this is the double negative slide
No, this is not that, Brother JJ.
no,
Double negative? No.
Na kamachanda dinanang na labatiti. So that.
Kamachande na labanti. That's not. Not yes. So not all of it.
So because of the double negative, I think so it means actually that all of it, so the craving tanha is all kamachanda. Then
Tanha, yeah.
yeah.
If you take the word chanda, yes. When it comes to craving, tanha is always unwholesome. But if you take the word chanda is a desire. That desire may be wholesome or unwholesome.
Yes.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So now earlier we said kamachanda. We have to differentiate the three terms kamachanda, kattukamyata chanda, and dhammachanda. But if you say kama tanha, that is always unwholesome. And then kattukamyata chanda can be either wholesome or unwholesome. Dhammachanda is always wholesome. But if you take craving tanha, that is always unwholesome. So tanha will always be kamachanda. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so the double negative, so we will have to say that all of it is kamachanda. Also, all cravings, tanha is kamachanda, but the word chanda can be either wholesome or unwholesome. Then the Dhammasaṅgaṇī Anutika. So this is a further sub-commentary to the Mula Tika. It mentions that some say that Dhammachanda is faith or Saddha. So this is one school of thought. They mention that Dhammachanda is Saddha. Now we again come back to that same Nikkepakandam description of Kāmasava. Now we are going to talk about Kāmaraga and Kāmanandi. By way of being sensual pleasure, Kāmana vasena, and by way of attachment, Rajjana vasena, sensual pleasure itself is passion, rago. Therefore, it is called sensual passion, kama raga. So basically, two words have been combined here. We know that kama refers to sensual things and raga refers to passion. So when you combine the two, it's the passion that is directed towards sensual pleasures. Then the next word, kama nandi. Again, kama by way of being sensual pleasure, kamana vasena, and by way of delighting, nandana vasena. Sensual pleasure itself is delight, nandi. Therefore, it is called delighting in sensual pleasure, kama nandi. Now let's look at the next few terms, kama tanha, kama sineho, kama parilaho, kama mucha, kama josana. So sensual craving in the sense of craving is called kama tanha. So we crave for sensual pleasures. Then having a fondness towards sensual things would be called kama sineho. Then having the sense of burning or having a sensual fever is called kama parilahu. Because when you, the more we go towards these sensual pleasures, it becomes kind of like a fever or like a sense of burning. You keep going towards it, you keep burning in it, but there is never an end to it. Then kama mucha. Mucha means it's kind of like fainting or going into a state of confusion. So these sensual pleasures can cause that kind of feeling for the mind. So this state of confusion in the sense of fainting is called kama mucha. Then devouring sensual pleasures in the sense of swallowing. Gilitva means to swallow. Even in Sinhala, we say gilinava, to swallow. So, devouring sensual pleasure. So, the mind tends to engulf it, devour it, kind of eat it up. That is called kamajjosana. So, all of these terms refer to this kamasava. So, this is what basically the kamasava does to the mind. This is how it kind of changes the mind or influences the mind. Okay, so now again, one might wonder, why are there so many terms to describe the same thing? If you look at each of these definitions, you will see that the severity of the craving seems to be different from word to word. So it is kind of like a gradient. So from like a simple craving or a fondness, then it's going gradually increasingly into a fever, then a state of confusion, then finally a devouring of sensual pleasure. So if we just think about our own minds, each one of us have different craving. So some people would be, and if you consider the five sense objects, the rupa, saddha, gandha, rasa, pottabha, each individual would have an affinity towards maybe one or two more than the other sense objects. So, for instance, if I talk about my own self, I am very fond of music and I like food. So, those are my weaknesses. But another person may have a different one. Maybe it's for the visual stimulus. Like that, each individual has their own preference, and the degree to which one has that tanha also would vary. So if you just, for an example, if I take, let's say you watch two different types of TV programs. One, it's a weekly thing and you just watch it every week, like out of habit. But another one, you're very fond of it. So you're waiting until the next episode. So that itself shows the difference in your craving. So these terms you can take as that example where it's showing the different degrees of this tanha. Now we will move on to bhavasava. The Nikkepakhāṇḍam description gives the word bhava chandu, and let's look at that description. Concerning rebirths, bhava chandu, desire for rebirth, is the desire which arises by way of aspiring to rebirth in rupa, fine material, and arupa, immaterial forms of life. By this method, the other terms should be understood. So basically, the desire, bhava chanda, or the desire for rebirth, is with reference to the desire to be born in either the rupa or arupa realms. Now we come to Ditthāsava, and this is the Nikkepakhāṇḍam description, and Ditthāsava is described by these 10 definitions. So by the 10 modes beginning with the world is eternal or sasato lokotiva, the varieties of wrong view, ditti, are being stated. So what is sasato lokotiva? To hold that the world is eternal. And we'll look at it next. So, Sassato Lokotiva, it is a form of Sassata Ditti. So, Sassata Ditti or eternalistic wrong view is where a person holds that the world, that means the five aggregates, the Rupa, the Rupa Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, these five is considered as the world, and one grasps these five as permanent, stable, and everlasting. And this wrong view is an eternalistic view. And this is the first view that is being described, and it is part of the eternalistic wrong view. Now we'll come to Asassato Lokotiva, or that it is, the world is not eternal. This is the opposite. It is Uchcheda Ditti, an annihilationistic view. So here, not eternal is the view arising as annihilationistic view of one who holds that the world, again, this Panchakanda, is annihilated or that it perishes. Now the third one, to hold that the world is finite, Antava Lokotiva. This refers to the wrong view held by one who has attained a limited kasina meditation. So a person who has attained an absorption on a small kasina, which is the size of a small bowl or a winnowing basket. And this image at the bottom is what a winnowing basket is. So now, when that person goes into that absorption, he or she takes this material and immaterial phenomena that occurs within that absorption as the world. And because there is a limit, it's not, it has a boundary. So he grasps it as the world is finite. So this wrong view can be either eternalistic or annihilationistic. It can be either Sassata or Uchcheda Ditti. So he thinks that the world has a limit, and this view, on top of this wrong view of limitation, he may also have a further view that it can either be eternalistic or annihilationistic. So this Antava Lokotiva, that view can either be eternalistic or annihilationistic.
那接下来呢，我们来看这个有边际是什么样的定义，在译注里面。这世间有边际呢，首先呢是指一个禅修者呢，他修的是边禅。那这边禅呢，他要证得的是这边说是微小边禅。什么叫做微小边禅呢？就是它的这个边相，它的这个禅相，这个边相呢不是很大，它只是大小呢如这边的钵鸡或者是碗这样大小。钵鸡呢就是老师在图里面左下角这个图里面好像这样的这么大小，或者是碗一样大小的，只有这么大小的这个边相呢，通过这个边相呢而证的边禅。那这样的一个禅修者呢，他将边禅通过边禅这样的边禅而获得的这个色界无色界的诸法呢，视为世间，认为这个就是世间。那因为这个世界呢，只是用这样大小的这个边相而证得的，所以他认为呢，这个边相的界限呢是有边际的，不是无边无际的，所以因此呢，就只取这些色界无色界诸法呢为有边际，所以这样呢只取世间有边际的方式升起的这个邪见，那它可以是常见，也可以是断见。
Now let's go to the next one. Anantava Lokotiva, to hold that the world is infinite. Now this view is the opposite of the previous one. Now it is a person who attains a jhana utilizing an extensive kasina, which has no boundaries. So this person considers the material and immaterial phenomena that occurs within that absorption as the world, and because there is no limit, because it extends without limit and without any boundaries, he grasps the world as infinite. Again, this view also can be further subdivided as eternalistic or annihilationistic. It can either be Sassata or Uchcheda Ditti. Tang jivan tang sarirantiva, that the living soul is the body. This is part of Uchcheda Ditti, annihilationistic view. That the living soul is the same as the body refers to the wrong view that arises in the mode of apprehending annihilation. So, why is that? Because one identifies that this body which perishes itself as the soul. So, when one dies, when the body is destroyed, one thinks that the soul is also destroyed. So, this is the view that one gets when some people say, okay, we have only one life. After we die, that is the end. So that view is an Uchcheda Ditti because they consider the living soul the same as the body. Anyang jivan anyang sarirantiva, or that the living soul is a different thing from the body. This is a form of sassada ditti, eternalistic wrong view. In the next class, since the soul is held to be other than the body, when the body is annihilated or when the body perishes, the soul is not perished or not annihilated. This is the wrong view that arises in the mode of apprehending eternity. So this view is where one thinks that the soul is different to the body, and once the body is destroyed, the soul lasts for an eternity. So that's a sassata ditti. Now let's look at the Mula Tika description. Although the apprehension of a soul different from the body occurs only with respect to the 5 aggregates subject to clinging, it is not established in matter, feeling, perception, mental formations, or consciousness individually. Since one conceives a soul as something apart from this is an eternalistic wrong view, sassata ditti. So, it is more of an imaginary thing. So, the Panchaskandha is there, and then one may think, okay, this body is the Panchaskandha, and the soul is something other than that, which is an imaginary entity. And they will think, okay, the Panchaskandha is destroyed, but that soul or that imaginary thing which they consider as soul will last an eternity. The conception of a soul occurs only in relation to the aggregate subject to clinging, that is the upadana khandha, because in ultimate sense, there isn't any phenomenon apart from them that could serve as the object of the notion of a soul. So basically, we know that we have the Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, the Panchaskandha. There isn't any other entity apart from this Panchaskandha. So if one considers something apart from this Panchaskandha, then that is something which doesn't really exist. It's just a conceptual thing. However, it is not established in Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana individually. This is because one does not remain with their true, unaltered nature as it really is. Instead, one becomes attached to some imagined characteristic than what that one has superimposed upon them. A characteristic that exists only as a conceptual construction. So again, it's the same thing that we mentioned. It's not something that really is there. It's something that one has imagined or conceptualized as a soul, which is apart from the Panchaskandha. But there really isn't any such thing. So it is basically a wrong view. So it is for this reason that it is said, taking it to be something different from them. Them means the Panchaskandha. From them means from the aggregate subject to clinging, the upadana khandha. For some adherents of wrong views do indeed see feeling and other aggregates as impermanent. So some people who have the wrong view, they see the feeling and as well as the other aggregates as impermanent, or alternatively, from that means from the aggregate of material form, which is called the body, because the statement is the soul is one thing, the body is another. So the Dhammasaṅgaṇī Anutika gives different versions or different ways a person can have this wrong view with regards to taking the soul as a different thing from the body. They might first take the body as the panchakanda and think that the soul is something completely apart from it, or they may take the body, that is the rupakanda, as the body and the soul as the remaining nama, dhamma. Or they may take a particular nama dhamma like feeling or any other thing and consider that as impermanent. So likewise, different people can have different varieties of this wrong view. Now let's look at the last four. Hoti tathagato param maranativa, that the living being exists after death. Na hoti tathagato param maranativa, the living being does not exist after death. Hoti cha nacha hoti tathagato param maranativa, the living being both exists and do not exist after death. Neva hoti na hoti tathagato param maranativa, the living being neither exists nor do not exist after death. In the four following views about living being, Hoti Tathagato Param Maranati Adisu, the first, that he exists after death, is eternalistic, sassasa ditti. So this individual will think that all living beings will exist after death. So that is an eternalistic view. The second one, he does not exist after death. That is Uchcheda ditti, annihilationistic. So that individual considers that all beings will not exist beyond death. The third one is partial. So the third one says living beings both exist and do not exist after death. So this is semi-eternalistic. And the example given here in the Brahmajala Sutta is in some individuals may think that the Mahabrahma is a living being that will always be there or is eternal. But the rest of us, the rest of the living beings are not eternal. They will not exist after death. So that is a semi-eternalistic or a ekacca sassata ditti vada. Then the final one, they say he neither exists nor does not exist after death. This is called eel wriggling theory or amara vikkepa ditti. So eel wriggling means, now we know there's a fish called eel and it's a very slippery kind of fish. If you try to catch it, it's very difficult to catch it with your hands. It will just slip away and wriggle away. So this ditti is also similar to that. If you ask an individual with this ditti, he will say, a person neither exists, a person neither exists nor do not exist. They kind of slip away. They don't give a straightforward answer. So that is called amara vikkepa ditti. Now let's look further at the ninth one, hoticha nacha hoti tathagato parammaranativa, that the living being both exists and do not exist after death. One who regards a self, a certain self, such as Brahma or another being, as existing, hoti, permanently, while regarding another, that is anyang means another, as not existing because it is impermanent, holds the partial eternalistic view, ekacca sassasa ditti. So they say some exist, that is with reference to something like the Mahabrahma or some other being, as existing, and some do not exist, they would say the remaining beings. Now, these two words that I have highlighted, hoti and anyang, are further described in the Anutika. So the word hoti, exists, means to continue to exist. That is, the self is eternal. Then the word anyang, another, means something other than the Brahma or the Isara, that is the creator, and similar beings. So the anything other than what one considers as eternal, the remaining ones are called anyang. And now we'll go to the final one, neva hoti na hoti tathagato parang maranativa, or that the living being neither exists nor do not exist after death. When asked, does it exist? He replies, neither. When asked, does it not exist? He also replies, no. So one who rejects every proposition in this way holds the wrong view of evasive equivocation, amara vikkepa ditti. It is called amara vikkepa either because it is an equivocation that never reaches a definite conclusion, amara, non-termination, non-decision, or because it wriggles like an eel, amara macha, constantly evading commitment. So here, they will not commit to an answer. If someone asks, okay, does it exist? They will say, no. Does it not exist? Again, they say no. So they are not giving a straightforward answer. Now, this is a summary of all 10, and I have given what type of ditti each of these fall into. So the first one, sassato lokoti, where one holds that the world is eternal, is sassata ditti, eternalistic view. And similarly, anyang jivang, anyang sariranti, that the living soul is different from the body, that is also sassata ditti. Or that living beings exist after death, that is also sassata ditti. Then the second one, the world is not eternal, then the living soul is the same as the body, and the living being does not exist after death. Those three are uchcheda ditti. Then the third and fourth is where one has a limitation. The third one says the world is finite. The fourth, the world is infinite. So these can be either sassata ditti or uchcheda ditti. And then one may say the living being both exists and do not exist. So that is a partial sassata ditti, ekaccha sassata ditti. And the final one is the eel wriggling theory, amara vikkepa ditti, where one doesn't arrive at any conclusion. They say the being neither exists nor do not exist after death. So these 10 fall under these different types of ditti. Now we come back to the Atthasālinī. Now after all of these descriptions, they say these are the states that are the intoxicants. So that statement was given in the Nikkepa, thus making that of sensuality and rebirth as one modes of lusting. So kāmasava and bhavasava, as it is one in the sense of lusting, it is lobha. The intoxicants are 3 states in brief and 4 states when expanded. So if you consider the 4 intoxicants, you have kāmasava, bhavasava, ditthāsava, and avijjāsava. That is the expanded version. If you take it briefly, there are 3 cetasika, lobha, ditti, and moha. But it may be asked, is the passionate desire which arises for a mansion, a wish-yielding tree, ornaments, etc., that is vimana, kapparukka, ābharanesu, just an intoxicant of sensuality, kāmasava, or not? Now, this is the Atthasālinī description. They say it is not. And why? Because lust of the 5 senses is put away of the Brahma Devas here. That is, so this is the Atthasālinī view, but The Dhammasaṅgaṇī Mulatika and Anutika holds a different view, and we'll talk about that. So, according to the Atthasālinī, they say that when it comes to the Rūpāvachara and Arūpāvachara Brahma, they have completely let go of this Kāmasava. And whatever desire that they have for the Vimana, the mansions, the Kapparukka, the wish-yielding trees and such like, those are part of the Rūpāvachara Brahma planes. That is something apart from Kāmasava. It is not Kāmasava. That is the Atthasālinī view. Now, speaking further, now that passionate desire, lobha, when it is ranked in the condition group, that is the Āsavagocchakaṃ, it is known as the condition that is greed. When it is ranked in the knot group, the Gantagocchakaṃ, it is known as the bodily knot of covetousness. In the corruption group, that Kilesa, it is known as the corruption of greed. But is passionate desire, when coexistent with wrong view, known as the intoxication of sensuality, Kāmasava or not? Now again, the Atthasālinī holds a view different to the Mulatika and Anutika. Here they say that when there is raga that is coexistent with ditti, that it is not called Kāmasava. It is instead called ditti raga, lust of wrong view. And why do they say that? They say, thus it is said, gifts made to a person lusting with the lust of wrong view are not of much merit, not of much fruit, nor of great advantage. Now we go to the Mulatika. Since it has been stated that sensual lust associated with the 5 strands of sensual pleasure, that is the Panchakama Gunika Raga, is the Kāmasava, intoxicant of sensual desire, one might deny that Raga, lust, and Ditti Raga, lust associated with wrong view, connected with the mansions of Brahma and the like, are Kāmasavas. So now the Atthasālinī said that when it comes to the Brahmas, they have, the Rūpāvachara Brahma, they have basically got rid of the Kama Raga, and now whatever Raga that they have towards the those celestial mansions and so on in those planes are not Kāmasava. It's something apart from Kāmasava. And then again it mentioned that if you take Ditti Raga is something apart from Kama Raga. So that is how it's described in the Atthasālinī. However, if there were greed, lobha, that was free from both Kāmasava and Bhavasava, then whenever it arose in a consciousness dissociated from wrong view, that intoxicant of ignorance, that avijjāsava, which is associated with it, would have to be regarded as dissociated from the asavas. Now, remember, if we go back to our Āsavagocchakaṃ Dhamma, we said that the moha cetasika that arises with the 2 dosa chitta and the 2 moha chitta are Āsavagocchakaṃ Dhamma. Why? Now, what are the 4 asavas? Asavas are, if you look at them as cetasika, it's lobha, ditti, and moha. So the 2 dosa chitta has only one asava. It has only ignorance. Similarly, the 2 moha chitta also only has ignorance. So it is alone and does not have another asava for it to become sampayukta or associated with. That is why under Āsavagocchakaṃ Dhamma, we said that the ignorance that arises with the 2 dosa chitta and the 2 moha chitta are Āsavagocchakaṃ Dhamma. But now, according to this description of the Atthasālinī. If we said that there is some kind of greed that is free from kāmasava and bhavasava, that means we are referring to another kind of lobha, another entity of lobha. Then therefore, this avijja that is associated with that wrong view, associated with that lobha chit, that ignorance, it would be dissociated from the asavas, because there is no kāmasava and no bhavasava. It is some other kind of lobha, which is not kāmasava or bhavasava. And because we mentioned that chitta is a ditthigata vippayutta chitta, a chitta dissociated from wrong view, ditti is also not there. So then that description that we gave under asava vippayutta dhamma will have to have another entity added as ignorance associated with some lobha sahagata chitta which are ditti vippayutta. But there isn't such a statement there. So similar to the avijja that is associated with the two dosa chitta and the two moha chitta, there should be another entity given there, but it is not so. Thus, one would have to say that delusion, moha, arising in the four greed-rooted consciousness dissociated from wrong view, may either be associated with the asavas or dissociated from the asavas. But there is no such statement. Why? Because if you take the Dhammasaṅgaṇī, they say that kāmasava arises in the 8th greed-rooted consciousness. That is, here in the Āsavagocchakaṃ description of the Atthasālinī, they say kāmasavo attasu lobha-sahagatesu chittuppadesu uppajjati. Then again in the pakaraṇa, it's mentioned that dependent on kāmasava arises ditthāsava and avijjāsava. So that means ditthāsava arises together with kāmasava, not with something apart from kāmasava. Therefore, it cannot be said that greed associated with wrong view is not kāmasava, because it's straight away mentioned in the pakaraṇa that ditthāsava arises dependent on kāmasava. Now coming to the Anutika, just as the immaterial existence, arupa bhava, is attained by abandoning attachment to fine material realm, rupa raga, so too the fine material existence, rupa bhava, is attained by abandoning sensual lust, kama raga. The commentary, Atthakatha, rejects the view that in the case of fine material Brahmas, the lust associated with the 5 strands of sensual pleasure, that is the panchakama gunika raga, is abandoned, but not the attachment to their celestial mansions and the like. That attachment being regarded as non-sensual lust or akama raga would therefore not constitute the kāmasava, the intoxicant of sensuality. So the Atthakatha said that now when it comes to the Rupavachara Brahma, they abandon this Panchakama Gunika Raga. However, they still have the lust towards the Vimana, the Kappa, Rukka, Abharana, so on. But that is not sensual lust. It is something apart from it. It is an akama form of akama raga. However, the sub-commentators, the Tikacharis, by demonstrating that there is no greed, there is no lobha apart from kāmasava and bhavasava, because lobha is only 2 entities, kāmasava and bhavasava. There isn't anything remaining. Everything falls, all lobha falls under these 2 categories. And they explain that even the attachment of fine material Brahmas to their celestial mansions and similar objects is of the nature of kama chanda, sensual desire. Accordingly, all greed that is dissociated from attachment to fine material and immaterial existence, that is the rupa and arupa bhava raga, everything that is apart from rupa and arupa bhava raga, and is dissociated from wrong view, ditti, is to be understood as Kāmasava. With regard to this matter, one should examine carefully and adopt the interpretation that is reasonable. An asava, an intoxicant, may arise associated with kamaraga, sensual lust, or with bhavaraga, lust for existence, or it may arise dissociated from intoxicants together with some other kind of attachment, raga. By the absence of any mention in the canonical passages beginning with the 4 categories of wrong views, etc., the non-existence of greed apart from Kāmasava and Bhavasava is demonstrated. Then by citing the canonical passage beginning with Kāmasava, it is established that the attachment associated with wrong view, ditti raga, is included within Kāmasava. So because there is no separate description given in the Pali saying that there are 4 categories of wrong views and so forth, we have to understand that firstly, there is no greed apart from Kāmasava and Bhavasava, and when it comes to ditti, it is associated with Kāmasava, because during our last lesson, we described Bhavasava always arises in the dittigata vippayutta chitta. Then where does ditti arise? Ditti has to arise with the Kāmasava. So, basically, in a nutshell, we have only 2 asavas, and that is two asavas in that correlate to lobha, kamasa, and bhavasava, and there is no greed apart from that. And ditti raga is part of kamasava. Moreover, it is proper to take these intoxicants in order of the corruptions as well as that of the parts. In the order of corruptions, the intoxicant of sensuality or sensual pleasure, Kāmasava, is eliminated by the 3rd path of never returning, Anagami Magga. That of rebirth, Bhavasava, by the path of arahantship, Arahatta Magga. That of wrong view, Ditthāsava, by the stream-winning path, Sotapatti Magga. That of ignorance, Avijjāsava, by the path of arahantship, Arahatta Magga. So if we look at these asavas as corruptions, and in the order of their elimination, the first one to be eliminated completely is the Ditthāsava by the Sotapatti Magga. Then Kāmasava and Kāmasava is eliminated by Anagami, and then Bhavasava and Avijjāsava by Arahatta Magga. In the order of parts, the intoxicant of so that is if you take in the order of corruptions, it is the first paragraph, and then in the order of elimination, it is the 2nd paragraph. So it's the same thing they have mentioned in 2 different ways. Furthermore, the sequence of defilements, kilesa, may also be cited. So this is the Mulatika description of the previous slide. The mention of the asavas is made for the purpose of showing what is to be abandoned. Accordingly, when explaining their abandonment, it is appropriate to present both the defilements that are to be abandoned and the parts that abandon them in the same order in which those defilements were originally enumerated. For the purpose of showing what is to be abandoned means for the purpose of demonstrating that these states are abandonable. By abandoning, pahane means by means of the act or cause of abandoning, through the condition that brings about abandonment. So now the entire description about these asavas were talking about about these defilements, and at the end there is mention about the fact that these defilements can be abandoned and how they are abandoned, which parts are responsible for them to be removed. So with that, we come to the end of our lesson. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. So feel free to either email the questions or ask them during the next lesson. So our next lesson will be on the 9th of August. It is now time to share merits. Brother JJ, I can't find the... right, found it. Okay.
Can't find
No, I couldn't find the icon for sharing. Okay.
And now, we can see.
Ākāsattā ca bhummattā devā nāgā mahiddhika puññantaṃ anumoditvā chiran rakkantu sāsanam chiran rakkantu desanam chiran rakkantu mamparam. Idam me ñātinam hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Idam me ñātinam hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Idam me ñātinam hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Imina puñya kamena mame bala samagamo satam samagamo hotu yava nibbāna pattiya. Idam me puñyam āsavagocchakaṃ hotu. Idam me puñyam nibbānassa paccayo hotu. Mama puñya bhāgam sabba sattānaṃ bhājemi. Te sabbe me samam puñya bhāgam labantu. Buddha sāsanaṃ chirantiṭṭatu. Buddha sāsanaṃ chirantiṭṭatu. Buddha sāsanaṃ chirantiṭṭatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you,
Thank
Doctor.
you, Professor.